Let's get straight to one of the most important judgments that you were part of delivering, and that is 370. Now, of course, you're Kashmiri yourself. You come from Kashmir. You belong to the Pandit community that was very tragically and violently forced out of the valley. But more on that later. On the judgment itself, you were part of the bench that upheld the abrogation. Your slight difference in your own judgment was that you believed that Jammu and Kashmir did enjoy a degree of sovereignty even after independence. My question to you is: you would have seen the criticism from some quarters. Fali Nariman, I interviewed him. He made a technical argument. He said that a presidential notification in the way that it was issued cannot be the vehicle for change. There are others who believe that this has been a blow to federalism. I'm sure these are people you respect, people who are your friends, have been your peers. Were you disconcerted to see some of the criticism? On reflection, do you stand by what you said, what you argued on 370? You weren't alone, of course, but how did you see that criticism?
So, well, any issue generates debate. I'm a person who believes in a debate, and there are bound to be difference of perceptions. So, Fali is somebody I hold in great respect, I must say, one of the finest lawyers. But then we can have difference of perspectives. I listened to what he said and your interview with him. And ultimately, what he said was the process was not right. This is his view. But he was also categorical on the aspect that this is the law of the land as it stands now. I have no regret over what I wrote. I believe that is the correct view. Some may agree, some may not agree with it. The assimilation of Kashmir followed a slightly different pattern into the country. And as it went along, the degree of assimilation increased. Now, whether there should have been a total assimilation as was being sought was a political decision. That political decision was taken. The remaining, which was resting, was the constitutional judgment on that issue as to whether such assimilation could take place, and the process was fine. Unanimously, the court on most other issues have ruled in its favor. Yes, you're right. The slight difference of view I had was that I thought that a part of sovereignty remained, but it assimilated through over a period of time. And secondly, I wrote my own epilogue because I'm concerned with the people of Kashmir from one community or the other is not important. It's how that area I believe was suffered.
I'm going to get to that epilogue in just a moment, but I'm glad to hear you watched my interview with Mr. Nariman. Like I said, he made a technical point. He said, look, I accept the Supreme Court verdict. I'm no one to question it. This is now the law of the land. He just thought that the way it was done was unconstitutional, the way the notification, the way the abrogation was sought to be done. And he made the point that even if the government of the day had the numbers to do so, so therefore eventually the outcome would have been the same, on a point of law he disagreed. When you saw that, did it give you pause, or do you just think that your interpretation of the law is different?
No, I listened to it. I appreciate here the point of view, but I believe the call we took in the circumstances was the right call to take.
Let's come to your epilogue then, since you do, of course, stand by your judgment. But you said in the circumstances, it was the right call to take. What do you mean by in the circumstances?
In the circumstances, in the scenario where there was absence of state government at that time, there was a constitutional mechanism failure earlier which had occurred, which had brought a governor's rule. So we will have to judge the methodology in the scenario in which it existed. It was not a perfect scenario. So whether in that scenario, how the implementation had to take place constitutionally, we believe that the way taken by the government cannot be really faulted.
Hmm. In your own judgment, in your epilogue, there was a very impassioned acknowledgement of what you call the intergenerational trauma of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I think, in a way, you don't have to be Kashmiri to recognize that, but I'm sure your own personal experience in some way informed that understanding. I don't think we've had the opportunity to hear about that experience. Could you speak a little bit to how your own experience as a Kashmiri Pandit underscored your understanding of the trauma there?
So let's see, let's go back a little. 1947 saw a partition of the country. There was a huge displacement. People suffered. People moved from here to there. But those people then rebuilt their lives. So that was a trauma over which it took almost a generation for the next generation to accept the existence and proceed with their lives. Similarly, in Kashmir, my own belief is from 1980s the problems were cropping up, uh, possibly not addressed or not addressed rightly, till it blew up. When it blew up, the consequences was directly faced by the Kashmiri Pandit community, which had to migrate. 4.5 lakhs plus people had to leave their home and hearth in a comfort which they were used to. And I believe politically it was never tackled. It was never thought what should be the right way forward. Now, after that, the army came in because it became in issue of the border protection and other aspects. Army is not a force which is it's meant to fight wars. It's not his own ways of looking after it, and we were facing a war. So in that, the people who left behind, also faced a problem, and there were perceived excesses which happened. So both communities face this problem, and a whole generation has grown from 1989, 88, 89 till today. We are talking in terms of 33, 34 years. So a person who was, say, 5 years old is about 40 years old today, has not seen anything better. It's only the last couple of years, I keep going there, that I feel there's a better understanding, the feeling that this common culture had its own path. The younger people may not have seen it. They missed something which should have been there. And thus a way has to be found. But I believe the way forward would require an acceptance of what has happened, and the acceptance it is not the right thing which has happened. If you do that, you provide a solace to the next generation who feels there's a recognition of what has happened to the previous generation and then carries forward. I also believe that when we talk about the way forward is not creating ghettos for the community. The way forward is to give the community confidence to live in the environment and the place they lived. Nobody's going to come back suddenly after 30 years, the next generation. People have settled in different parts of the world in the country. But like all people who move, you want to keep your roots alive. And that roots must remain alive with the place you belong to. That's the only way I think will happen. I for one, have kept my touch with them. I talk to people. I sometimes try to understand what is the view from both sides. And I keep telling them that unless you forget the past and move forward, um, it'll be difficult to accept the reality.
You have urged for the setting up of a sort of South Africa style Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You also acknowledge in your epilogue the fact that violations have taken place by both state and non-state actors. Do you believe that anyone will heed this suggestion by you? Because you also speak about how memory can fade. Before memory fades, let this happen in a time-bound manner. How strongly do you feel about the need for this Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
Uh, uh, if I've written about it, I obviously mean it. Whether the government accepts it or not is not something within my domain.
Would
But
you
I
hope?
believe if
Would you hope that the government, so quick to embrace the Supreme Court verdict, would also embrace this recommendation?
I hope so, because I think that will help in assimilation. After all, they also say that assimilation should be there. The objective of all this is better assimilation of the state in the country. If that is the aim and if that is the objective, then what has been what I perceive as an injustice to different sections of society must also gain recognition so that people learn to live with peace. Everything can't be only a law and order situation.
Absolutely. Personally, do you think of a time when your family might be able to go back to the Kashmir Valley in a more permanent way? Would you like to?
Uh, yeah, I keep going back. I have my family house which has survived. Some of the places, cottages I had did not survive, were destroyed. I've tried to rebuild. I want my family to have roots in Kashmir. I think we'll lose our roots, and my children and my have backed me in this issue that they would like to have their roots there, and that's why I keep going back and I'm getting my place in order so that I stayed in after almost 34 years. In June, I went and stayed 2 weeks in my own house there. So it was a very, very touching moment for me to be able to come to my own place and stay there and not stay in a guest house.
That's lovely and very powerful, I imagine, and also emotionally gut wrenching, I imagine. I have one last question on Kashmir. The Supreme Court was criticized, as much as one can criticize your lordships without facing contempt. for the delay in hearing this very important case. It was 4 years after the fact almost. Why do you think that delay happened?
So before I answer this question, just to give you the one thing which I did not only stay in my house. I saw walking paths in front of the house. It's near the Jhelum. I saw people, tourists, local people walking there, talking, wanting to say, okay, you are coming and stay here, come back and, there. I invited people who were my neighbors whom I did not know any better. I knew their families. And my children would take out their dogs for a walk, or children at even 11 o'clock at night. Can you do it in Delhi? You can't do it. That's the environment I knew of that place. And I was very happy to see that environment.
You're saying Kashmir feels safer today than Delhi?
Yes, in some ways, yes. We look at incidents. So when an incident happens in Kashmir, we say, oh, this has happened in Kashmir. But there are certain districts which are prone to a problem. It's not that every part of Kashmir is touched by it. So don't these incidents happen all over the world in the best of developed societies, somebody going crazy?
I mean, there is a different challenge. You don't need me to tell you this. There's a different challenge of security in Kashmir. It's not the same.
Yes, it is. I'm not denying there is a security challenge. We'll have to work it out. There's no want to do that. But I believe things are changing. I believe the people are starting to think. There may be difference of perceptions, but they do feel that assimilation is a way forward, and that is also actually egged me on to write the epilogue. On the delay, see, when we began the hearing earlier, I was part of that bench. In the middle of the hearing, when largely the petitioners had addressed, suddenly this issue cropped up as was raised, whether it should be a 5 judges or 7 judges bench. A lot of councils were not concerned, wanted the hearing to go on. But there were some councils who were quite adamant at this issue being addressed. And that issue thus became like a preliminary issue to be addressed. It took a little time to address that issue. And thereafter, of course, for some time, the hearing has got jettisoned. In our own ways, we thought it should be taken up. Well, I can't really say why it was not taken up, but all matters have possibly a time when they must come up and be heard, and it was heard that way.